This pie party.
Your pie party.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, a friend of mine has, and
Who
so
is
you can
that?
Party then.
Suzanne?
I'll
Good to go. Everybody else is good? Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna call our October 23rd meeting of the Altadena Library District Board of Trustees to order at 5:03 p.m. And as always, we will start with our land acknowledgement. The Altadena Library District acknowledges its presence on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded land of the Gabrielino Tonga peoples. Altadena is located on the stolen homelands of the Hahamunga tribal band. The traditional territory of the Gabrielino Tonga is referred to as Tonga-Ngar, which includes the areas currently known as Los Angeles County, Riverside County, West San Bernardino County, parts of Orange County, as well as the 4 Southern Channel Islands. Entities such as the US government and non-native settlers have subjected the Gabrielino Tonga peoples to historic and continuing injustices, including genocide, forced displacement, and cultural and linguistic erasure. Altadena Library commits to learning, educating, and informing its staff and residents of present-day Altadena about the rich histories, vibrant communities, and culture of the Gabrielino Tonga people, present and past, through our collection development, resources, and program offerings. On that note, I would recommend everybody go see Killers of the Flower and Moon. Good movie, just take some time. It's 4 hours. Okay, start with roll call. Trustee Lynn. One person.
Here.
Andrews. And then Katie is excused. Okay. Any reordering of agenda items? Everything looks good. And can I get a motion to adopt the agenda then?
So moved.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Do we have any public comment on non-agenda items?
We do not have any public comments.
Cool. Easy. Okay, can I get a motion to approve the minutes of our regular meeting in September? You can find on pages 4 through 8.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
No, that is approved. Thank you. We didn't change anything from the consent calendar. So that moves us right into the departmental updates and special presentations. Do we have any comments or feedback on the departmental reports before we get into the presentation? The trustees?
Yes, I'm just trying to remember it. It was from your report, Ashley. There was something in the little lanyap. Is that how you pronounce it? Come back to me. I'm gonna look it back up. Sorry.
Well, I was immediately texting my sister when I saw the piece about the Fab Lab and like designing the covers for the banned books. There's this group, I think it's called Mothers for Liberty. It is like touring the country, pushing to ban books. And so my sister just organized a protest over the weekend at one of their events in Connecticut. So I immediately was like, you gotta see this, look at the cool stuff our libraries are doing. And she was like all excited about it. So I love, again, as always, I love that we're able to do all the cool stuff that we do.
And I just had a comment about Sophia Ryan for Youth and Family Services. Securing the California State Library for the Stay Play grant, which is designed to support the needs of informal child care. I wrote it all down, you can see I'm reading it here, but that idea about informal childcare and people needing a little bit of orientation about how to do that correctly. Because you know, people all over the country must be dropping their kids off with their neighbors and their uncles or whatever. And the idea, and maybe I've missed this before, but it seemed fresh to me in this report, that there would be a program that we can present to people that are in that situation, how to handle that whole thing correctly. So I thought that was just a terrific program, the way it's described, and I wanted to pass that on to everybody.
I got it. I was, what is it gonna be in? It says coming soon, the early literacy equity kits. What's gonna be in that? What does that look like?
It's really just the books.
Uh-huh.
It's maybe 4 to 5 books per kit. And, each kit might have a different theme. So there's about 16 of them, some duplicates. Cause we'll have some at 5 and some here, but it's mainly just books. I know the word kit made me think when they first pitched it that there would be manipulative and other things, but it's like 4 to 5 books.
And it's one of the ones like you all have that they can check out and bring back.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Anyone else before we get into the special presentation? Okay.
Over there. And the legitimate presenters. No one. Good evening, trustees.
Good evening.
I've been going from thing after thing after thing for like days now, so I'm sort of winging tonight a little bit. So really happy to present the first 3 teams that participated in our staff development day for you tonight. I did put Sophia's with us in spirit, she's off today. But I told her I would present her slides, so please tell her I did an amazing job. So just as an overview, as you're probably aware if you're reading the board packages, each of our 6 managers took a team of 4 to 5 staff to visit 3 libraries in Southern California and the Inland Empire that was back on October 6th. Each of the managers rented a van or ended up being a very large SUV just so everybody could like ride in the car together and enjoy some time together, bonding and getting to know one another. Because as you know, it takes a long time to travel everywhere in Southern California. Each of the teams took photos, were given a clipboard and like a template to take notes and compile information about each of the sites that was visited. We're currently having 3 different debriefing sessions. We have 2 teams each day. We ambitiously thought we could do 3, but each team really needed more like 30 minutes to be able to present, to give an overview of their time at each of the libraries. 3 of us managers are here tonight, technically 2, but 3 of us in spirit. And then the other 3 will present the other 9 libraries to you at your meeting next month. So first, we have team, should I move that? Yeah, let's just move her down there. Team Inland Empire. This team was led by Sophia, as I mentioned, and included Gerardo from facilities, Natalie from passport services, Michaela and Janelle from adult services. We did try to sprinkle in people from all the different departments to the teams that they normally spend time or work with. What did I do? Yeah, there we go. So the first library they visited, and I don't know if this is the exact order, but one of the libraries they visited was the Ovid Family Community Library, which is also known as the Ontario City Library. This is the library we stole Sophia from, I will
Mhm.
point that out, so thank you to Sean for letting us take her away.
Of the library.
Mhm.
So she had some, of course,
Insider.
interior insight to that library. They do, one of the things they pointed out was compared to a couple of the other buildings that she visited, they do have a CERT desk, a youth services desk, a teen desk, adult desk, computer information desk. There's lots of service points all throughout that library. You don't necessarily find that in all the libraries that you visit currently. In terms of exterior space, there was no front lawn. They did have an enclosed outdoor patio connected to their story time room. And they were located on the same block as the town square and had electric chargers, which is excellent feedback as we're continuing to design. As well as pointing out that new construction was being built around the building. In terms of the interior space, they did feel it had a modern feel to it. But both her and Michaela, when they presented to us, really mentioned that it had government building vibes. And that there really wasn't a lot of comfy seating for adults. In terms of technology, yes, it's an impressive list. They had the AWE computers, which are, what does that stand for? It's like, they're more interactive for younger children, as well as 16 regular children's computers. Interestingly, I'm gonna get to it way later, but Newport Library got rid of their children's computers. I don't know if I told you guys that during our presentation. Because they took them out during the pandemic and then they never brought them back and all the parents were really glad. So it's an interesting, depending on what the needs of the community are. They also had a Lightspeed makerspace that they pointed out, which had many of the similar equipment that we have in ours. And they did have a really cool laptop checkout machine. I think it's in the next slide, which a couple of the groups mentioned really liking. Where did I find that? Oh, I think I saw one. It was another slide of theirs. Just you'll be able to see it. But here's a couple other photos from their visit. You see they had large posters for marketing that were switched monthly. This was their information desk upstairs, which was separate again from their circulation desk. And then this was that outdoor patio that connected, if I can see, to the story time room, which another library that we visited, same thing, like you have this outdoor space to let the kids go like run it out after story time. Okay, moving on. I think I went one too many. Yeah, no. David. Okay, yeah, it's when I keep moving this, I think that I messed it up. Okay, so next they visited the Paul A. Bain Library, also known as the Rancho Cucamonga Public Library. I've heard a lot about this library, never have visited, so I do need to get over there. It's located in the mall in Ontario, so in case you haven't visited, yeah, it's inside the mall. As you can see, it had a circulation desk, one large reference desk. One side of it faced the children's area, one side of it faced the adult area, but so two people always staffed it. I remember her mentioning that. They had a staffed Friends of the Library bookstore, as well as offered passport services, but that was a small desk that was part of the reference desk. So in terms of exterior space, it's in the mall, so no outdoor lawn. Being that it is an outdoor mall, there is a plaza in the front entrance where events are often held. She did mention that there's a community hall and theater attached to the building, but it belongs to the city, so they could have access to it, but it didn't sound like they used it very often. So in terms of their feel on this building, the space had a very 90s feel to it. Take that as you will. The colors and themes were nice, but really looked outdated. The upstairs portion of the library is actually being remodeled right now as a children's museum. So I could see that as being a cool partnership for them in the future, as well as having a very small passport office. So in terms of technology, oh, this was the one I was thinking of. See this laptop kiosk, like where you can actually like check the laptops in and out. They really liked that. As well as they saw a rate our service machine at the front of the library. So that's something to consider. So again, this was that front library and they had a seed library display. This is a typical, I feel like 90s thing that they put in the bleachered seating in the story time room. We also saw this at the Huntington Library and we're told not to do that because it makes the space kind of inflexible to other programming that's going on.
Mm.
Here's their teen space, but no staff desk, as well as their children's area, but again, no staff desk. So something to consider, is it good to have one big service point for everything and then just these random spaces versus like having dedicated service points? So something for us to consider as we design for sure. So their last visit was to the Riverside Public Library.
Mm.
See the building here?
Mhm.
It is interesting.
Mhm.
This one was just opened in, do you remember, 2022? Or was it 2019? It's a new build, like, Erin Christmas, who's the library director, she hasn't been there that long and she was there for the renovation and to open it. I can't remember exactly when, but this is definitely the newest building of the ones that they toured. We were all really curious how you get in, and I think she said like that you go in over here. But the biggest issue there was there's very limited parking, and like they're competing for this garage right here, even staff had a hard time finding parking. So definitely something to keep in mind. They had 2 security guard desks, a main information desk, adult services, children's services desk that when they were there was unstaffed. They did have a staff friend of the library bookstore, as well as an archive department. So the building is shaped, so there is a large plaza area under the library, as you can see. In my mind, that feels like waste space, but what do I know? And again, as I mentioned, parking is limited and even difficult for staff to find parking. There's an outdoor patio on the 2nd floor or the main floor of the building. In terms of interior space, there is a community room. I believe it's this right here, as well as an open space within the children's area. Had a very modern design with unique art, like as you can see here. I think this is the children's room actually. They did have 2 huge laptop checkout machines, some cool innovative lighting within the shelves, so something else for us to think about. Community room was very modern with high tech, which I think you'd find in really any newly designed building. And there were computers for patrons to use in terms of technology. So again, natural lighting with their windows. This is that upstairs floor. We're always really jealous of storage here, so I guess they were really happy to see facility storage space that was very organized. And this is some of the storage space that they have, the shelving that moves. I'm sure you guys have seen that. It's more compact, takes up less space. And then signage for children's book by author and subject, which you don't always see when you have your Deweys or your other classification systems. So these were their big takeaways. I'm sure Sophia would have had a lot more to say, but those are the first 3 libraries, and I'll pass it over to David.
Nikki, do you remember if it's Riverside City or County that's subcontracted?
The county.
The county is, right?
Yeah, Riverside County is LS&S.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, not the city yet, okay.
All right, I'm up. So my team, we all had to pick a team name and we were trying to get a little creative with ours. We didn't really hit all the South Bay, but we liked the South Bay theme. And then also we had a few Star Wars fans in our midst, so we called ourselves the South Bay Pod Racers. So that was made up of our marketing specialist, Bryn, myself, Isaac, who's a library aide with us, Lauren, who's a librarian at our branch, and Mel, who works in adult services. And we all had, as Nikki mentioned, there was a sprinkling of different folks from different areas, which was really nice because we all had different viewpoints and thoughts about it. And so we focused our presentation a little bit differently on the different focuses that we all kind of focused in on. So I'll go, so the first site we visited was the Billie Jean King Main Library at the Long Beach Public Library, and this was renovated in, I believe, 2019. So we focused in on the different sections. So all the libraries seem to have quite a bit of art, but this one had some floating walls and rotating exhibitions. Unfortunately, when we got there, it was blank. So there's some growing pains because they work with an art committee and they have to approve everything. So it does take a little bit longer for them to get art on display. So sometimes those walls just sit bare, unfortunately. but they have curated by community partners, and they have some permanent collections in their Miller room, some murals and some paintings on the walls there. This building was really new and modern. It was really beautiful on the inside. They used a lot of wood to kind of keep it structurally sound and secure, but also a little bit light. But then the issue then became sound traveled a lot in this building, so they really didn't have a lot of consideration for sound when they did the renovation. And so if you're on the main lower floor, it would travel all the way up to the ceiling because it had really high vaulted ceilings. But new building, and usually that means new tech, as Nikki mentioned. So they did have some laptop checkouts, similar to what we saw earlier. A lot of new computers. Their meeting rooms had the newest tech for a screen where you can connect wirelessly to. They tried to keep it simple, so it was easy to use for folks. So just easy connect wireless for the screens. Their meeting rooms also had new AV systems, and they also had some community spaces that were modular and movable, and so they could break up rooms into various sections, and then also had really nice AV systems and all of that. As I mentioned, very modular meeting spaces in their community room areas. They had a lot of different areas that were kind of like off the beaten path a little bit, which was nice so that people couldn't wander into them necessarily. But also the problem with some of that was that, you know, if you wanted to direct people to certain spaces, it could become a little bit difficult to do so. Their sound studio was on the second floor, and they had the film and photo studio in there and all the equipment, laser cutters, 3D printers. It was all really nice, and it was just interesting the way that everything was nested. So you walked into their main maker space, or that they called it the studio. And then within that, there was like one little, like almost looked like a closet, but it was really deep, and that had the Fab Lab kind of equipment, so the 3D printers and the laser cutters. But then off to the other side, in another little closet, they had the sound studio. So everything was kind of interestingly sectioned off. A lot of digital signage. They had an AMH, which is an automated materials handling system, which is really nice. They have a decent amount of volume that comes in, so they had this sorting system that was able to kind of help sort the materials and make it easier to show. So rather than having to sort line parts, you could just essentially just have everything kind of sectioned off to these are children's, these are adult, these are teen, and so on and so forth. Again, a lot of digital signage throughout the building. Not too many, but a decent amount where it was directional and kind of situated in such a way that each individual space had its own signage that kind of catered on to specific areas, but then overall the same theme throughout. And they had no sound. They had a graphic designer that dealt with designing the slides, and then their IT department. So this is a city library system, so they work with the city for a lot of their IT needs. They do have some in-house IT, but most of it's contracted. And so specific services like copiers and whatnot, they have to work with the city to get those into the building, and they work with whatever they've been asked to utilize. Did have some flyers, but not too many. Their brochures were really nicely printed. And this is obviously from Bryn. Many paper resources in the family's learning center display signage was printed in-house. And then they had two different comms, the staff plus the city supports. They had a good communications team. So the other library we visited was from the Palos Verdes Library District, which is the Malaga Cove. Now, you will see in the next iteration of presentations, we kind of overlapped a little bit. We went to more of in this case, like an art-focused library system, and more of a unique library, not system, but library in this case within the Palos Verdes District. And this was more of Mel's choice, focused in on art and different displays, and then the uniqueness of the building. So they had a designated gallery space, which was really nice. They always had rotating exhibitions. There was one in there when we were there. It was curated by the branch manager, and that space they had some local history rooms, some photographs, paintings. But also what was interesting about that space is that they housed weddings and wedding receptions there. So it was a very multi-use space. They on the tech front, they had a really nice AV system that was donated. The the money for that was donated by their friends of the library. And they just had this amazing system in there that was able to kind of be very versatile. So they had a band practicing or warming up for that wedding the day that we were there. So even though the building was quite a bit older, I think it was built in the 30s, the infrastructure was built in such a way that it supported facilities really nicely and also technology really nicely. So they could kind of retrofit as needed. So they had just recently replaced their network infrastructure. As I mentioned, the AV room, they had just redone that, and they had some new digital signage in the building as well. Then they had that single large digital display right across the street from the reference desk. They had a few flyers, and many of them were related to the history of the building. Yeah, and then they had a nice social media presence and a marketing team that could handle and support that. So that was the Malaga Cove. They had a really nice view as well. You could see out into the peninsula, and you could from their tower. It was a really beautiful space. Very much an old school building, but you know, they did try and upkeep it and made sure it was renovated so it just looked gorgeous and always stayed up to date. They talked about some of the issues that they had related to the historic nature of their building and having to preserve some of the fixtures, and I think some other groups would talk through that as well. But that was one of the things is to preserve the integrity of the historic building, they had to spend quite a bit of money to build fixtures to match and make sure they were updated accordingly, because some of the light fixtures, for example, they wanted to put LED, but had to pretty much fabricate light fixtures for that. So that was one thing that they talked about. The last library we visited was the Cerritos Library. This was a very much experience-based library. I don't know if you all have been there. It's a pretty amazing library. They have this whole Main Street vibe. It kind of feels a little bit like a mall. And in that space, they use that to display different art exhibitions. So they have, rather than hanging things on the wall, although they use some of that, they had this main display, and they rotate that out in glass display boxes. And it was curated by staff with a lead, and then they had a permanent collection in various spaces throughout the library. And part of their funding and their art that is brought into the building that were the main and permanent fixtures is related to building development. So when there was new building development there, the developers need to either donate some funds or purchase a piece of art for the city, which is really interesting. And so they were able to bring some of that art into the library. On the tech front, their tech was a little bit older because this building had been renovated some time ago, so they were working on replacing a lot of it. They were starting to incorporate new things like iPads. So instead of having only computers in the kids' space, they started bringing iPads in there for a different dynamic of learning and play. So that was interesting. They had a separate computer lab, which was really nice. They had, interestingly, sound system that kind of was unique to separate areas. So even within the children's space, they were playing multiple types of sounds depending on where you were, because the children's space was kind of broken up into different little spaces. They had like a big tree space where they had just this beautiful big tree. They also had a rocket that was similar to like a NASA rocket that would go off. So there's just a lot of different unique spaces, just not only within the children's space, but then also in the other spaces, adult spaces, teen spaces. And so they were trying to sort of shape the experience and the feel of each unique space and kind of put you into that mindset. Yeah, so they were a little bit more restrictive as far as their library cards. You obviously have to pay if you're not a resident for their library card or a business resident. So then similarly, if you wanted to use their Wi-Fi, you needed a library card. And then also they didn't have any makerspace or library things, and they kind of just stated that their patronage didn't really seem like they were as interested in that because they had the means to be able to purchase some of that themselves. So they really weren't focusing in on that at all. Yeah, in marketing, they had quite a bit of digital signage throughout the library and some brochures as well. They had some unique, similar to their looks and feels of each individual section. They had some signage that kind of matched that theme. So it was very unique depending on where you were within the library space. And they also had a huge event, space, up in the top, but then as for the reopening, they had just tons and tons of people coming in for that, which was some time ago for the renovation. There's a lot of challenges, and I like to talk through these because I think we can learn through some of the challenges that we've seen, from some of the libraries, and a lot of them reported low circulation. So instead of focusing on circulation, they were focused in on programming and other services to bring in patrons, and then using that to try and help with circulation. A lot of them related to COVID, trying to bring people back into the building. For the Billie Jean King, another thing that they talked about was that this idea of the post renovation, they had designated spaces for certain things, and then they had to rethink that. So trying to be modular and thinking through like multi-use spaces is important, because they did have to repurpose a lot of spaces where they thought we would put this thing here, but then ultimately didn't quite work out how they wanted to. Yeah, so again, I talked about sound traveling in the Billie Jean King Library, and we talked through some of the things in the Malaga Cove, repairs on original furniture, and the building can prove quite difficult and expensive. And then Cerritos Library was a little bit more rigid for their city council, and management had high expectations and conservative values. So some of their ideas had to be kind of tempered a little bit based on what the requirements were from their board and their management team. So I have some takeaways here. A lot of them had local history rooms and local history spaces. They featured their local history, heavy emphasis on technology and maker spaces for most, although even though the Cerritos Library didn't have a maker space, they had a technology lab where they can do trainings, and the city used that quite a bit. Strong support groups. All of these organizations and these libraries had extremely strong support groups, and obviously we do as well. We're grateful for that, but these folks also had that as well, and so it made them successful libraries. Quite a bit of digital signage, and so we'll look at that as we look toward renovations. Many of them had more an experience-based focus. I have a picture down the bottom right corner of the Cerritos Library Children's section. As you walk in, that's what you're walking into. Again, also emphasis on art and local artists, and that was at all of the libraries. And then, as I mentioned before, 2 out of the 3 were low circulating, but didn't mean that they weren't getting use. It just, they weren't getting as many checkouts as they would want to, but they did see a lot of people come into the building and use their services and go to the programs.
Yeah, did I miss it? What do you mean, like, what is the definition of low? Just like by feel or?
Well, I mean, I think if you look at trends of past, it was mostly pre-COVID and post-COVID. And so they didn't give actual metrics necessarily, but they were saying, like, if we looked at what our numbers were pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, they were significantly lower. So they were having a hard time not always getting people back into the building, but getting people to continue to check out materials. So their focus became more on other things like the experience, arts and culture, and then programming.
But they didn't say if it was like, overtaken by digital or other circulation.
No, not necessarily. Just low circulation in general. Could be both physical and digital.
Okay.
It's interesting because ours just keeps going up and up.
Yes,
Well, I think Palos Verdes is a special district library.
yes, they are. And that was one of the main reasons why we wanted to go to Palos Verdes, is to kind of get a feel for how they operate as a special district.
So the rest of these were not then?
No.
Okay.
So the Long Beach is a public library system run by the city ultimately. And then we talked about Palos Verdes, and Cerritos is a city library as well.
I just wonder if there were any comments about the way that their library staff had to work with, political institutions, basically, to get their funding and so on.
Yeah, there was a lot of that, especially for Long Beach, because they have a big infrastructure for the city. So they have other departments or sections that they work with to, like, their marketing. They had like a digital services department. So if they wanted to print flyers and things like that, they had to send it to that department for approval and review. A lot of social services as well. Pretty much all of their services kind of ultimately ran through the city.
Kind of slows things down then a little bit.
Yes. And Cerritos as well, but to some degree, they were, they even talked about, like, their IT department. Normally, the way it works is your city IT department sort of dictates what the library should be doing. But the Cerritos library was unique in that the staff that they had there were really helping to support the IT for the city. So there was this balance, so it didn't slow them down as much for other services as it might for some others, but in this case, it was somewhat balanced for that one.
I think the chief librarian or director at Palos Verdes came from here. Roy, remember his
Came
name?
from Pasadena, Jennifer Addington.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, she was a
I know who
deputy.
you're talking about.
pardon me.
I remember who you're.
Oh,
Yeah.
Ryan Roy.
Prior
Her
to.
deputy.
Okay, so he's still there.
Mhm.
Okay, got it.
And then I know the Long Beach and Cerritos, those seem like those are like their main libraries. Was there much of a conversation around just like interaction and support of any like smaller branch libraries?
We didn't, well, Cerritos only has one library,
Oh,
so they only focus just on that one place. I know, we didn't talk so much about the support of the branch operations for Long Beach, although, you know, they have quite a few libraries, so they do support. I think they sort of operate independently. The person that we talked to was the sort of the operations manager for the main library in this case, but I know one of our other groups went to one of the other Long Beach branches, so they may be able to talk through some of that. But yeah, I don't know how the support works specifically because we were mostly focused on the new building and operations within that new building.
Cool.
All right, I'll try to be brief, because I know we're getting. Okay, so my group, we were called the Beach Bums. So we visited 3 beach libraries. My group was composed of Anthony, our security monitor, Carlene, our technical services librarian, Caitlin, one of our library aides, and me. So this is us after lunch, ready for a nap in Huntington Beach. And then this was at the Huntington Beach Library with their assistant director here, who's wearing a dress that says, "I read banned books."
Mhm.
So first we visited the Manhattan Beach Library, and just to give context, main library is approximately 26,000 square feet. So just to give you an idea of size. This building was newly constructed in 2015. Their architect was Johnson Favreau. The building's approximately 21,500 square feet. It's 2 stories and the exterior siding is entirely made of glass. So it's very pretty, but also a lot of upkeep. They did have a huge emphasis on public art inside and outside the building. If you take a look here, this is an outside public art piece that's beautiful. Depending on where you stand, it's like iridescent, it looks different colors. And twice a year, it says the date right here, the sunset comes down exactly down the middle. And they said there's like a long line to like get a picture of that. Inside the building, can't exactly see it, but these are jellyfish up here, which I love jellyfish, by the way. So as you walk up the stairs, these were in the inside were different colors. And then there was this donated huge art piece when you first walked in the library as well. I don't have a picture, but they also had a very attractive Friends bookstore space, but a very limited storage space. Like it looked like this little closet. So goals, you know? So in terms of the building, there was a nautical theme throughout. Obviously, it's right next to the ocean, literally. So this is a picture from their children's department. All of this was a very interactive wall that's been there since it opened. When you walk upstairs, this is your view. That's the ocean right there. Okay, so I had a seat. I didn't want to leave. So and it's like the most amazing view from basically the entire second floor. On that second floor, they had 4 well-designed study rooms. That's this picture right here. Each of them had, and it sat like, 4 to 5 people, had projectors, screens, and you could easily hook up to all of that. So definitely a good model there. They also had an after hours multi-purpose space that could be closed off. They said that they barely use it. It's typically only for county meetings that they asked to hold there, but they did have a space that could be closed off. As David mentioned, this is one of the 86 libraries of LA County. So most of their services were centralized, like when we asked about marketing or maintenance or facilities or cleaning, all of that's handled by the county. And they did not have a makerspace, which to me was short-sighted from a 2015 design, but LA County has what they call their Make-Mo vans that go around from branch to branch. How often it makes it to the 86 of them, I'm not sure. But for being kind of modern, it was surprising they didn't have some type of fab lab or makerspace. But overall, a very beautiful building. Next, we went to Huntington Beach, and this was a behemoth of a library, over 115,000 square feet. It was originally opened in 1975. There was a 1995 edition. Designed by architect Richard Neutra, which I don't know architects, but I guess he's like a big deal. In this photo here, you can see there's like 2-story height fountains that were originally outside the building before the addition. You'd walk up and see those. Now they're encompassed on the inside. And they had 5, like if you look over in this picture right here, there's 5 floating platforms as part of the design. So each of these staircases like stops on a platform, and there's like either shelves or tables or other things as part of that design. From talking to their assistant director, that is way more of an ADA compliance nightmare than we have. So good luck to them. It's a cool look, but it really kind of made it hard to navigate the building, to be honest. Lots of plants and water features all throughout the building. And they had a huge Friends bookstore. You see this picture right here? That's just the Friends bookstore, as well as a gift shop when you first walk in. But from talking to her, when you have 115,000 square feet, you have the ability to provide some more space.
It's like the size of Bob and Lucas.
Probably bigger. I mean, honestly, they gave them so much space, and they had downstairs a storage area as well. We didn't look at it, but I guess it's substantial. But the Huntington Beach Friends donate 250,000 plus to the library system each year. So they do they raise a lot of money. So over here was their children's area. This was actually part of the addition of the library. Didn't really wow me too much. It honestly, again, had that 90s feel, which I don't know how else to describe, but as the 90s feel. For those that don't know, I came from Las Vegas 6 years, almost 7 years ago, and almost all the libraries were built in the 90s there. So like, it's a thing, that this 90s feel. One of the pieces of advice she gave us was don't put a boat like this in there. It's too tall, even though it looks short, like kids like to climb on it and fall off of it. So like if you're gonna do some kind of interactive fun thing, make sure it's not something that you're constantly yelling at kids to get off of, which she did twice while we were touring with her.
Got it. No boat in the kids
Yeah,
section.
no boat. They also had an amazing makerspace. Like on this table right here are all things that were made in the makerspace. They had a couple of extra pieces of equipment that we even didn't have, so something we would probably want to pursue. But they did get $100,000 IMLS grant to be able to purchase all of that. She did tell us that it opened in February of 2020 after they bought all this equipment and then closed. Now it's open again, and it is only open 3 days a week though. So it shows you that it can be challenging for all of us to have staffing to be able to like open that space and make sure that we're providing instruction and services by knowledgeable staff. They also have a huge literacy department, classrooms, one-on-one spaces. It had its own staff lounge, which we found kind of interesting. And then you keep going, and downstairs they had a 320 seat auditorium where they had plays and other public performances for the community. Long story short, we didn't even see the whole building. It took an hour. It's huge, but it's very outdated. Like you can tell that like it needs definitely some work. But thank you for being a supportive governing board. They don't have one right now. Like her dress was in protest. So
It is Huntington Beach.
yeah, it's Huntington Beach. So one of the pieces of advice she gave us was, don't give your space away. They gave space to their genealogical society. As well as they have public art that's displayed as well, but it's like an organization that has space in their building. So just be mindful before we like give up space to other groups. And again, my group, we had space envy the whole time. Like if I just had even a portion. Okay, let's see, what have I done now? Okay, so our last stop was at the Newport Beach Library. Originally opened in 1994, and yes, had a very 90s vibe to it. It was 54,000 square feet. Oh wait, that should say in 2013, they had an addition that made it now over 70,000 square feet. That architect has a really long name,
Mhm.
never heard of him. There was a couple of them. So interestingly, what I wanted to point out, one of their cautionary tales is you see these lights right here on the stairs? And this is up to the addition. This is where the addition came into play. Each of those bulbs costs $500 to replace. So she said if they had to do the whole staircase, it'd be like $80,000 or something crazy like that. So something to think about as we like choose
Why?
our bulbs and our things all throughout. I don't know, they're just like rare or something. And sure, they look cool, but now they're trying to find some alternative and they'll probably have to replace them all so they match, but. So this is also the entrance into the addition of the building. Behind this area, like over here, it connects it to City Hall. So that's why the addition took place, is that's where their City Hall building is. When you first walk in these doors, to the left is where this passport office is. Originally, they had a passport, or I mean, a bank or credit union, and then across the hall from that, a coffee shop. The coffee shop did not survive, which is really common in pretty much every library I've ever visited. It's hard for them to generate enough business to stay in business. And then the bank decided to move on, so it's now their passport office. We feel very fortunate, we have 2 dedicated staff members. Their librarians sort of have to like fill in to take appointments and give passports out. Okay, so part of the addition also was this big green space, like this line, I think is where the addition came into play on the edge of their children's department. They originally built a storytime room that was way too small, like smaller than this room for sure. Maybe even like half the size of this room. And it did not accommodate the like 100 to 200 people they get for story times. So they added this space on, it's really just a big open room, probably because it gets used so much for children's programming. But they did repurpose that story space to be an area for kids with sensory needs that maybe are at the big program and need to like walk away. Another thing that they pointed out to us is they repurposed some of that original furniture, like they added these privacy panels so they can come in and out because nobody really wants to stare at someone they don't know while they're doing work at the library. We also felt like they had a good use of color throughout the building. Interestingly, they had a media lab instead of a makerspace. That was also part of the addition, part of the building. And it was funded, I don't remember by who, but it really focuses more on like software and digital technology than like making or crafting. They also had what says behind here, a recording studio, but we didn't even get to look at it because it was actually in use, so that's a good thing. But overall, very happy with our visits. It was interesting to like learn from what others have done well and not as well. But happy to answer any questions. Happy to.
I got just a fun comment on that. The Huntington Beach architect is a very big deal. His name, I believe, is pronounced Richard Neutra. He's a
Okay.
German. And about 10 years ago, the LA library had an exhibit of his drawings that he did for all of these buildings all over the world, very famous. And he always drew them in crayon, which was really fun. They're all multicolored, you know, and did a good job with that. Right, he's got a house here in Altadena too. He built one here.
Okay. That's a cool connection.
He'll have a hard time tearing that down in Orange County.
Yeah,
Oh, I don't think we'll tear it down.
I don't think they will either. If the day ever comes, there's gonna be a lot of.
Well, I couldn't even imagine how much it would cost. I didn't know what a great. It's huge.
Nikki, is there any like big takeaway, like it's just as far as where we're at with the facilities committee that like something that we need to kind of put some extra thought into as I mean, for anybody that went on the tours, I guess. I mean, the future proofing thing I kind of heard a few times, right? Like, don't get yourself stuck in.
Yeah, I think what I would say off the top of my head is make sure that your space is flexible as much as possible. Because who knows how you're gonna want to use it down the road, you know?
Yeah, we saw a lot of good things once we get to the, furniture phase of things
Mm,
that we would love to implement here, just the way some of their tables were like multi-use and they had outlets like dividers and just some really cool stuff furniture wise.
I also think where you can, if you can build in the experience of the space, like those spaces seem to get more use and bring more excitement, bring more people in. So as we think about, when we're building up those individual spaces, bringing in some of that experience to it, whether it's during the renovation phase or even post, like what experiences can we bring to individual spaces? Maybe it's important, like Cerritos had a green screen wall where people could come up and take pictures and the background rotated and it was so simple. They said we built it like 20 years ago, but people still cannot stop going, like they have to stop there to take a picture. So just even that, even though it's older, it's an experience, right? And so building that into at least your mindset as you're thinking about moving forward toward renovation, I think is helpful as well.
that makes me think of both. We haven't looked at it in a while, but the thoughts we put into the dividing wall between the teen space and the rest. Like thinking about that a little bit more, and I know there's been a few different ideas about when you first walk into the teen space, that first wall and I think trying to do something like you're talking about, right? Like, and that sounds like the kind of example where like, not, the most modern technology maybe isn't necessarily the answer, but what is something that would, like, it would stick around, right? Okay. Anything else? Cool. That's cool.
Very exciting. Thanks a lot for arranging
Yeah.
that. And I'm sure it was a fun event to attend for all the students.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a good day.
So we're now into our reports. So I didn't see, there's no reports from either our foundation or our friends. So then we're straight into Nikki's director's report.
Sure. All right, not me again. All right, good evening. I'll try to keep this short and sweet. So I'm really excited with the two new hires that we brought on board in October. Our IT department has doubled. We now have Alfredo Sanchez working as our IT specialist with David. He started on October 3rd, has hit the ground running, is being completely bombarded with information. But it's a really exciting position, and I think David and I are both excited for him that he, like, this job, you can learn as much as you possibly want and continue to contribute to what it is we're trying to do. I've never worked in IT, but David's told me that a lot of times, like, you get like pigeonholed into this function and you don't really get to like touch the other things or learn about servers or networking or whatever, and like he can learn it all and hopefully will. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think he's just very enthusiastic about giving new information and learning and kind of getting that experience of being able to branch into whatever section or focus he'd like to. And he's already proved himself extremely useful. Visited the vending machines and there was a small little hiccup there and was able to help get it resolved and working after this is both ribbon cutting. So yeah, he's been doing great so far with only 3 weeks of experience. So I'm really happy to have him.
Yeah. And we have him come say hello, but he works Tuesday through Saturday, which is great for us because that means we have tech support on Saturdays now as well. In addition to Alfredo, last Monday, we welcomed Danielle Guerrero, who is also off today, right? So we'll get her to a board meeting so you guys can meet her. She's going to rotate with Sophia so that we have a manager covering every Saturday as well. So super happy to have her on board. I saw her schedule last week, so I'm glad she's gonna return this week. Like, she had a lot of meetings because there's lots going on with her as our adult services manager. I know Ashley and I are super excited to have her on board, so. And that was a long time coming. We've been recruiting for that since basically the beginning of the year. So, hooray.
Yeah.
Yeah, we think, yeah, I'm excited. Okay, so I talked about staff development day since we already presented on it. Not much more to say, just again, thank you to the board for allowing us to close and providing this very educational and fun day for the staff. They've been saying to me since I got here, they wanted to like have staff day somewhere else, be at another site or something, so I think this fulfilled that wish by far. So our staff recognition team is now called the PEP Squad. Thank you to Catalina for her leadership of this team. We had a fun gathering at Prime Pizza earlier this month, and we'll have a fun costume contest next week. So thank you to this group for continuing to find fun ways to meet with staff, bond, and recognize the work that the staff do. It is a great team. I'm on it as well, so. So the vending machines have arrived, and not only have they arrived, but we had a ribbon cutting and launched one of them last Friday at Prime Pizza. Thank you to David and his team for all their hard work. Literally, like, we got them delivered on a Monday, Tuesday. Ribbon cutted, not that Friday, but the following Friday, and they had to completely catalog and fill them in that time. So they worked really hard to get them functioning, and it was a really successful launch. Thank you to Harry and Camille for coming by the ribbon cutting. And for those that aren't aware, we're still looking for another site. The one that's here at the main library, we'd like to find a permanent home for it. Exploring some things, we'd really like for it to be on the west side. Just one, we have to keep in mind it needs some type of substantial overhang, so to protect it from the weather. So if you have ideas, we had a couple more ideas thrown at us since launching it last week, so excited about that. What else do I want to talk about? I think that's enough out of me tonight. Happy to answer questions. I will point out that I am very happily flying to Nepal on Wednesday night with my husband. We're gonna be gone until I'll be back November 13th. Ashley's here. If you need anything, please reach out to her. Looking for a much needed break.
It sounds like a fun trip.
Yeah, it should be good.
Are you going with Alcina Rotary or is it, or you just?
We're sort of representing them, I guess you could
Okay.
say. No, it's just him and I, just Jared and I going.
Nice.
Yeah, so we'll be volunteering for a week at the school that, in the village that the Rotary's done a lot of support of. But yeah, they kind of like connected us with the principal and then people that have also made the same trip that helped us arrange everything. So it made the trip really easy to plan, which was nice.
Very cool.
Yeah, excited. I'll share pictures next time.
Just regarding the new vending machine and opening over there, it really feels great to have a presence that far east in Altadena, because that's one area that we've been lacking for so long. So congratulations for getting in at that particular spot. And now having one on the west side would really help balance everything. So that's good.
For sure. Yeah, and I should say thank you to Zach Fishman and the Prime Pizza team. They've been a dream to work with as well. David and I met with him, in June, May, a while ago, and he's like, whatever you guys need, just let me know, and so he, as they did construction, made sure it was ready for us to put in place. So he's been really great. So happy to promote his business and tell everybody to go get some pizza there and check out a book or Uno, right? There's board games in there. There's all kinds of stuff in the vending machine. Yeah. Yeah, Jared pointed that out. Get some pizza, you check out Uno. You
Check it
play,
back in.
you check it back in.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
Can ride the
At Prime
Prime
Pizza.
Yeah. And we did include a QR code that will show up on the screen in the rotation so that if people don't have a card, they can scan it, get a digital card and be able to check out one item to start at least, and then they can come in and make their card permanent and be able to check out more.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to use it and check out a book, and it was really cool, and it worked with the app because I don't even know where my physical library card is, so that was really cool. The easy process, and then I know I shared with you, I drove by later to go pick up my little one from that area, and there were people like huddled around it, using it. So I was driving, looking, and it was really cool. Good job. Great job.
Any comments? Okay. So you thought you were done, Nikki, but
Never done.
financial reports.
Yeah, we don't have Christie with us tonight because I feel like September is pretty straightforward. We're 25% into the budget year. So as is the case until we hit January, our report presents just over 73,000 in revenue, but 1.321 million in expenses. Meaning we've had a full 1.247 out of operating reserves to date. So as mentioned, we will get our big tax collection in December, so that number will look as a positive once we hit the new year. So our total assets right now are 33.3 million, of which 25.9 million is restricted for the library renovation project. So currently, our combined total of general funds with class, LA County and checking is 3.706 million, which is well over the 50% requirement of operating expense budget of 2.277 million. Happy to answer any questions you might have. It was kind of a quiet month with the budget, so.
Okay. That gets us to our standing committee reports, so I'll do my best to fill in for Katie on the facilities committee. There's one critically important update that we've gotten thanks to Nikki's connections since this was published. So I guess just to kind of give people some background on just kind of where we're at with timelines and some of our biggest challenges we've been facing. So, we've had, the Bob Lucas has been delayed, thanks in large part to delays on the county then with the CUP. And if you remember, we had to go through the CUP process because of how much we're increasing the size of Bob Lucas. And on top of that, there's a lot of restrictions and timelines about when to spend the money, especially with the state grant funding we got. And so we had been looking at, and that combined with the fact that we just can keep striking out on finding temporary housing for the library. And obviously the last thing on earth we want to do is have both libraries closed for any period of time, let alone an extended period of time. So we thought we were facing essentially being forced to make the decision to flip and do Bob Lucas after Maine, which is absolutely not what we wanted, not what we've committed to the community. And that was being driven by being told we had to spend the grant money at Maine or lose it. And I think what 7 point something million?
7.5 plus.
Yeah, so obviously we could not risk losing that. But luckily we've been able to confirm that we can get an extension to be able to spend that state money. So we are now back on track with doing Bob Lucas first. Because again, the goal, we're still trying to find temporary space, but the goal is to have Bob Lucas done and reopened before we have to close the main. So those are the key updates. I know we've asked this before, but if anybody has any connections with somebody who wants to give us some space that doesn't need a lot of money in renovation and doesn't cost a ton or anything to rent, let us know, because that's what we're in desperate search of. I think even if we're able to stick to the timeline, we would still prefer to be in a situation where we've got that available. Even after Bob Lucas reopens, it would still be good to have a temporary space. So that's kind of the key updates on the project. I don't know if you want to add.
Nope.
And are any questions from the team?
Well, the whole foot back now was based on that call you made, right, to your, which is great. So it's nice because it feels right to have Lucas get shut down and done first, it won't take as long. I mean, you got a library, why don't just back up and just go after this one? But there's still a need, everybody feels, for some kind of a temporary space somewhere to help with the order, okay?
Yeah, not just because we'd like to have a second public facing space, but you know, we have 25+ people working out of main library, so it'd be good to have a space to like house staff, have them working out of offering public service and potentially computers. It will depend on the space, what we can offer. Love to have even a little programming space, but again, otherwise we're looking at putting as many staff out of Bob Lucas as we can, but then trying to keep everybody busy remotely, which is a daunting idea to all of us managers.
Well, sorry, saying, how about this and how about that, but one building that's of interest to me is that Marion Davis, I think, building up there.
Davies?
Davies, yeah.
Yeah, we're exploring that right now.
Oh, yeah, okay, that would be a great one, because it's a historical building, it's in a big open park, there's plenty of parking, that would be a terrific one.
Yep.
You have to go through the county for that?
Yep.
Has Catherine Barger or somebody high up?
Yeah, we're currently working on scheduling a meeting with the director of Parks and Rec with LA County, and then Susie Niemer, who's the field rep for Altadena.
And she's
and
always at the
Barber's
town
office.
council doing gig updates and stuff, right?
Yeah, yep,
Okay, great.
yep. But if you think of other ones, just shoot me an email.
So next, is you, Terry, our government liaison report.
Oh, there's not much for the government liaison report. Only that we did cast our vote for LA LAFCO, which we get to do as a special district applicants. So they had 5 applicants and all of them looked pretty good, but the one that caught my eye the most, and you know, after some Google searches kind of sealed the deal, was Micah Ali, who's an interesting guy. He's got a lot of experience in government, and he runs a mosquito vector, I think, special district right now. But he's also, you know, he's been on cable news shows as a part of the panel, especially about minority education and so on. Interesting, energetic guy. So we placed our vote for him, and his resume is at the end of the package.
Cool. I appreciate taking care of that for us every year. Terry.
Thank you, Terry.
Okay, do we have any, there's no written one submitted, but any trustee reports?
No,
Okay. So then we have no unfinished business, so moving into new business. First, we have starting on page 54, review and approval of recommendation for legal services.
Yay.
Yeah, we got a need for that here and there.
So I brought the request for proposals for legal services to the August meeting of the Board of Trustees. We posted, it was approved, we posted it August 29th with the deadline of September 26th. Grateful to Steve Mermel, the former city manager of Pasadena and also a consultant we've been working with on my annual performance evaluations, to refer me to a lawyer that works for the city attorney's office in Pasadena to sit on the scoring panel with us. I wanted to have at least one lawyer helping us out. In addition to that, David, our IT and technical services manager, and Catalina, who probably works as closely with the lawyers as I do, were made up the panel. We received 3 proposals. All 4 of us scored them. As you can see from the package, scoring was really close. So there wasn't like a clear winner to any of us. So we decided to set up interviews with all 3 firms. We conducted interviews between October 10th and 12th. That was just myself, David, and Catalina. Unfortunately, Nick with City of Pasadena was unable to make the time for that. We asked the same 5 questions of all 3 firms, really with a focus on understanding their thoughts on responsiveness, familiarity with special districts, and their experience with labor and employment law. After scoring the answers to those questions, we unanimously agreed to choose Chronic, Moskowitz, Tiedemann, and Gerard as the firm that we're bringing to you tonight to hopefully authorize me to go into contract with. Honestly, BB&K, their proposal was good, their interview was good, but we really appreciated Chronic's focus on personalizing the services for us. We really felt like they looked at our website and had a good understanding of like what we've done and what we want to do. So feeling really good about going into business with them. I will share that I reached out to our general counsel, Rich Egger. I wanted him to hear it from me that we were gonna make this recommendation to the board, and he said they're a great firm and we'll be in good hands. So I was happy to hear that. Bringing this report to you and asking that you authorize me to contract with Chronic, Moskowitz, Tiedemann, and Gerard for legal services. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions?
No.
Can I get a motion to approve?
I move to approve it.
Seconded, all those in favor?
Hi.
Aye,
Aye.
and that motion is approved. Thank you, team. So item B on new business, review and approval of recommendation for professional development services. Starts on page 57.
So again, we also brought this request for proposals to the board on August 28th. After being approved, we posted it August 29th on BidNet and had also a closing date of September 26th. The selection and scoring team for this RFP were myself, our assistant director, Ashley Watts, trustee Katie Clark, as well as trustee Camila Wilkerson. Thanks for helping, Camila. So 6 proposals were received by the deadline. Those firms are listed here in the board package. Oh, and I will point out that the top 3 of both are a separate addendum on the website. We didn't want to have to print those out for you. So if you want to take a look at the proposals, you can for both legal services and professional development consultation services. So all 6 proposals were scored by all 4 of us. We came together, discussed our scoring, and agreed that the top 3 firms were CPS HR Consulting, MCG and Associates, and North Star Consulting Inc. We set up interviews with those top 3 firms on October 11th. Those were conducted by myself, Ashley, and Katie. Camila is always very busy, so the 3 of us conducted them. We asked 7 questions of each firm to get a better understanding of their familiarity and experience working with special district or other public service employees, as well as their ability to assess areas of growth with their clients and background in performance evaluation systems, which is the one thing I really want to do first with the firm that we hire. So cumulative scores are in the report, but as you can see, North Star Consulting almost got 100% on the score, and that is Jennifer Coyle. We've worked with her for the past 2 years. So she gave an excellent interview. She knows us really well, and we feel really good about coming to the board to ask for you to authorize me to contract with her or North Star Consulting to provide professional development consultation services. I didn't point out in the last one, but these services will be paid out of line 40, which is consultants other. And the estimate based on her proposal was that the 1-year cost of services would be around $45,000. That would be a not to exceed that I put in the professional services agreement. Again, I think it will depend on how much executive coaching and what other work that we do with her, but that would be high end, would be around 45,000. So happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions or comments? Okay, so can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second?
I'll second.
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye. And that motion is approved. So item C under new business, HVAC RFP. Is that Jonathan? Yes. Cool. And this starts on page 61.
Good evening, board trustees. we are submitting, the district is submitting a RFP for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, commonly known as HVAC, preventive maintenance and repair services. For the past 5 years, the districts have been using air conditioning solutions, which is called ACS. And they are located here in Altadena, local company. They've been doing our repair services, and we've had a service contract with them, and we renew it yearly with them for the past 5 years. But since that has been 5 years now, and just to ensure competitive pricing of services, the district would like the board of would like to recommend to the board this RFP that we want to present to you tonight. And so we would like to approve this RFP for HVAC and preventive maintenance services. And what was one more thing? Yes. The fiscal impact that we have here is between $10,000 and $25,000 a year. That's because part of it is for the maintenance services, for maintenance of the HVAC system, and also whatever repairs may happen, because our units are a little white old. So we're trying to maintain them as best as possible, but also knowing that since we will get newer units in the coming years, that may be lower. So
Do we think that any of the firms would ask for any kind of minimal annual compensation? Like, I'm just thinking ahead of like the main being closed for at least a year. Like, obviously there's not gonna be any work done during that time. I don't know if like they'd still be expecting some kind of.
well, most of these services that they do, they renew with us yearly.
Okay.
So if we're gonna do that, they may be contracted with us, but they may be doing like, they may say that this part of the maintenance service, could hold on for another time. So I could ask that, I could also ask that when we were doing that in the RFP.
Okay. Any other questions?
Do they know about the upcoming building activity?
It is also written in the RFP.
Okay.
Yeah. It is stated there.
Okay. Other questions? No? Okay. Thank you. So can I get a motion to approve? And a second?
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Okay.
Aye. And it's approved. Thank you, Jonathan. Okay, that's it for our action items. So we have 2 informational pieces. The first being the Measure A parcel tax summary report. That's on page 99. Is that Nikki?
So we have Sarah Mayers from NBS joining us. Thank you for sticking in here till now, Sarah. She'll be here to, NBS produce both this report as well as the next item. So I'll turn it over to her and she can just give you a brief overview of what you're looking at.
Good evening, members of the board and staff and members of the community. My name is Sarah Mayers with NBS. NBS serves as special tax consultant for your community facilities district. You may recall that we worked on the formation of that district with you. And we also serve as the administrator of both the CFD as well as the parcel tax. So we have 2 annual reports to share with you tonight. And I will go through those. We'll start with the parcel tax and move on to the community facilities district. And Nikki, do you want me to go ahead and share my screen? Is that easier, or do you have them there to pull up?
We'll have you share yours, Sarah. Give us 1 second.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, Sarah, you should be able to share your screen now.
Perfect, thank you. All right, so confirming everyone can see my screen, but also want to check in on the size. Would it be helpful if I zoomed in a little bit?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So
Yes.
we'll go there and we can certainly zoom in if there's any numbers we want to look at more closely or something. All right, so again, we'll start with the Measure A parcel tax. And this report is really a recap of the levy that was placed on the tax roll for 23-24. That levy was submitted in August of this year. and funds would be distributed from the county after each of the 2 tax installment payments. So after that December 10th payment is due or delinquent at the county, and then the April 10th payment. So this is a summary of the levy. And just as a reminder, this parcel tax is authorized to be collected through fiscal year 24-25. So 23-24, which this report recaps, is the second to last year for this tax that funds operations for the library district. And then another reminder that we did include a services component in the community facilities district that we are not currently levying any tax for, but after this parcel tax expires, we will begin to levy for services in the community facilities district, essentially to replace the parcel tax. So we did have just under 14,000 parcels levied for 23-24, and you can see the breakdown between the various types of property: single family residential, apartment, commercial properties were levied. And so that gives you the parcel count and the total dollar amount levied to each. So the total levy was just over $1 million in 23-24 placed on the roll. The next page shows the Local Agency Special Tax and Bond Accountability Act. This is SB 165, which was approved in September of 2000, and it required that there is a report that shows the amount of funds collected and expended each year. And so that's exactly what we have here. The amount of the balance on June 30th of 2022, the amount of funds collected, and the amount of funds expended leave you with your June 30 of 2023 balance. And I will note that this is the amount of funds enrolled to the county, not including any minor delinquencies or what have you that may have occurred. So the next many pages of this report is the actual detail of each individual parcel that was levied for the special tax. So you can see just here on the first page, we have a variety of different parcels. They have different dollar amounts based on their specific criteria for those parcels. So we have some single family, some apartment, which will vary, by unit and so forth. And then as you scroll down, you'll start to see some of those commercial parcels as well. So without going through all 335 pages of the parcel listing, I'll pause here and ask if you have any questions about the parcel tax before we move on to the community facilities district.
I think we're good.
You're good? Okay, thank you. All right. So we will flip over to the community facilities district. So the report on the CFD is a little more detailed, just because there are a few more requirements and things that we're tracking for you relative to that district. Of course, we have bonds outstanding, so that does make things a little more complex. But the report is laid out in the same manner. We first have the district summary that provides some information about the formation of the CFD, as well as the issuance of the Series 2022 bonds. Of course, the bonds were issued to finance the authorized facilities, so very excited to eventually see your improved libraries once these funds are spent and construction is done and all that good stuff. And just a quick side note, my mother was a children's librarian for most of her career, and she worked at both the Ontario library that your team toured, as well as the City of Riverside library. But those are both new buildings since she worked there. And if you've not been to the old City of Riverside library, their downtown library has now become the Cheech Marin Art Museum, which is fantastic. Highly recommend a visit if you're in Riverside. So going on to the levy amount, looking at the CFD for this particular district, we had 13,425 parcels levied, And the total dollar amount levied was $1,299,255.59. And this is, as I mentioned, only for the facilities at this point, or essentially the debt service on those facilities. We are not yet collecting for services under this district because we're still collecting the parcel tax. And so that'll flip after 24-25 to where both components would be included in the CFD. We are looking at the fund balances of each of the funds and looking at the special tax fund in terms of paying the debt service, as well as looking at the reserve requirement and ensuring that the reserve requirement is met. You do have a reserve insurance policy in place, and so that is meeting your reserve requirement. We also monitor delinquencies on those special taxes. You do not receive 100% of the amount that you levy on the tax roll because there are occasionally folks who pay their tax bill a little bit late. And so we're monitoring that just to ensure that if there should be delinquencies that rise to the level of needing to pursue judicial foreclosure pursuant to your bond covenants, we would be able to advise you and take appropriate action there. We are not in that situation. There are no delinquencies that are high enough that they would necessitate anything like that at this point. Again, we have that same local agency special tax and bond accountability act that applies to all special taxes. In this case, you have a couple of funds that do have money sort of coming in and coming out on a regular basis. That's your special tax fund. So again, here we have money, the initial balance, the amount collected, the amount expended, and then the June 30th balance. And then we have a handful of funds that were set up at the time of the bond issue. And these aren't changing quite as much. You're not adding funds to these accounts. Your costs of issuance were costs related to the bond issuance. And so that money was deposited when the bonds were funded, and that money was spent to pay all of the costs of issuance, and it's now closed. Your reserve fund, as I mentioned, is an insurance policy, so that doesn't change. The project fund is what you're using to spend on construction at this point. So the initial deposit was the almost $23 million, and about $880,000 had been expended prior to June 30th of 2023. Capitalized interest was a way to pay that first interest payment since we had not yet levied special taxes on the tax roll. So that was just a more of a timing issue, making sure that the bond issue funded the interest, first interest payment since there were no tax collections made prior to that coming due. And please feel free to stop me at any time if you have questions as we go through this report. The special tax analysis is included here. So as I mentioned, we're levying for principal, interest, and administrative fees and expenses. The principal amount was $365,000, interest almost $866,000, and then the administrative fees at $68,000. And so that's just shown in the pie chart here. Just like when you start a mortgage, the amount of principal that you're paying initially is on the lower side, and the amount of interest is greater. And as you move on through the payments and get more towards the end of that payment schedule, you would expect to see the amount of principal increase and the amount of interest decrease. These are the special tax rates. And this should look familiar to you. This information came through to the board for approval as we were preparing the levy this year. So we have the various types of property and give you the number of units or parcels that were being levied here. And we have the 23-24 maximum special tax rate. And apartments are levied on a per unit basis, commercial is levied per parcel, and single family is levied on a per building square foot basis. So looking at the maximum special tax rate, which is set in the rate and method of apportionment for the district, as compared to the applied special tax rate. So at this point, for single family residential, which of course is the majority of the property in the district, we're levying at a rate of 5 cents per building square foot, where the maximum rate is just over 10 cents per building square foot. The maximum special tax rates are authorized to increase by 2% on an annual basis. Again, that was part of the measure that was passed when the CFD was approved. We have a year-over-year special tax comparison here. For each type of property, we are showing you the maximum rate in 22-23 and the maximum rate in 23-24. Here we're showing the applied rate for 22-23 and the applied rate for 23-24, and then the percent of maximum that we're levying. And that'll vary just slightly each year as we're levying for debt service, just based on what the actual principal and interest are coming due, as well as any minor changes to the administrative expenses. And you can see that overall, the change in the applied special tax rate went up by 2.7% between 22-23 and 23-24. Looking at the fund balances, again, we are looking at the various funds here. The special tax fund has a balance of 778,000 and change. Some additional funds were added, and the debt service payment was made in September of 2023. And then we do estimate the amount of money that would be needed for administrative expenses as well. The reserve fund, as I've mentioned, is funded by an insurance policy. So that's not a cash reserve that you have sitting on hand, just that policy is in place. And this is a metric that you may remember from when we came to the board to authorize the issuance of the debt. One of the metrics that we're looking at is value to lien, and that is the assessed value of the property as compared to the value of the debt lien for the CFD. And the reason we look at this metric is to understand if there were to be properties that are very delinquent that needed to be foreclosed on as a result of their delinquency, is there enough value in the property to add a tax sale to get the value of the property? If we were to sell the property, is there enough value in that property to repay the lien amount? And the answer here is a resounding yes. In general, we're looking for 3-to-1 is the minimum that we would want to see when we're issuing debt. And you have a almost 402-to-1 value to lien ratio, which essentially means it's excellent credit quality. This is a picture of the district boundary. This is the boundary map for the CFD. This is coterminous with the boundary of the library district. And then the last few pages are information you've probably seen before. We like to include them, for anyone who may be new to the community, who's seeing this for the first time, and also just so you all have these handy. But this is the rate and method of apportionment for the CFD from the district formation. So I'll scroll through that unless anyone has any questions. This is the current debt service schedule for the debt. So the bonds were issued in March of 2022. The issue amount was 21 million, and you might be wondering, how do we have 23 million in our project fund? And that had to do with the debt structuring. At the time of the bond issue, we had an original issue premium and different structuring factors that actually led to us being able to get a little more cash for your project. And you can see that that debt is scheduled to go out to 2052. And you have interest rates have changed a little bit since these times, just a little while ago. You've got 5% for the first several years and then 4% thereafter. Most municipal debt is a little bit higher than that at this point, with interest rates rising. This is your delinquency summary report. This report is showing the 22-23 fiscal year. Of course, 23-24 is what we just placed on the tax roll in August, and those payments are not yet due. They won't be due until December of this year and April of next year. So looking at the status from last year, it looks like the total delinquent percentage is 1.41. You know, generally very low. There are a handful of installments that are delinquent, but generally, you know, very low dollar amounts individually. And so, you know, not anything to be concerned. We certainly, I think, just in overall in the state, we're seeing delinquencies creep up just a hair from where they have been in prior years with general economic concerns and so forth. But again, nothing here that's triggering any foreclosure covenants or any concerns. These typically will clean up, you know, fairly quickly on their own. And certainly we'll keep monitoring that for you. And the final billing detail report, this again is the parcel by parcel listing of the levy that was placed on the roll. So it shows the classification of each parcel and the dollar amount that was placed on the roll. And again, I won't scroll through all 300 and something pages of that, but happy to answer any questions that you all have about the CFD report.
Sarah, just a quick question from me. This is a lot for me anyway. I'm probably speaking for myself. This is a lot to absorb with all the different funds and rates, and everything else going on. Or do you have an open door policy when it comes to us calling you up to ask about questions about some of these numbers when we have an aha moment and we think we've really got that one nailed down? Can we check with you about this stuff going forward?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, of course. Yeah, either feel free to email me or, you know, or call or how, you know, arrange a meeting, whatever the case may be. I'm happy to answer questions at any time.
And then just generally speaking, one of these reports, one of these documents, that was an annual report, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm assuming we'll get a big package like that every once a year to take a look at and so on. At what rate do we see other reports, or do you get us with monthly items as well?
So we are calculating the levy only once a year. So this is really a recap of the levy that we calculate once a year. There are other reports that are required just in terms of there's reporting that goes to the California Debt and Investment Advisory Commission. There's continuing disclosure required for your bonded indebtedness and so forth. And those are items that are filed with those other agencies. So the CDAC, or California Debt and Investment Advisory Commission, has some reporting, and we file that directly with them. So it's not something that comes necessarily to the board, but it is reporting that they require. And along with the bond disclosure, that is something that would be filed with EMMA, the Electronic Municipal Marketplace, that's run by the MSRB, which I know we have too many acronyms in this business, the Municipal Securities Review Board. So you know, so we're filing some of these other reports and so forth that are required by outside agencies of the district.
I guess a better way to phrase my question would be things like delinquency rates. If there's a sudden spike in that or something happens, you let us know those sorts of signposts as they occur, right?
Yeah, delinquencies we're going to check after each installment payment is due. So the first installment is due in it's due in November and then delinquent after December 10th. So we check that after December 10th, and then we would report back to you on the delinquencies as to what those delinquency rates are after that December payment, after that April payment, and then again in June of each year. So 3 times a year.
And do you still field every now and then a call from the public that's complaining about the tax and wants more explanation and so on? Does that, I know a couple of times it went to you. I'm wondering if that's changed or it's still happening.
We definitely still take calls. I think, you know, certainly when new folks purchase property and they're seeing that on their tax bill for the first time, you know, I think it's probably, we're probably receiving less calls than we did initially. When we placed the first levy on the tax roll, and that is something that is new to people, we certainly field more calls that year because it's something that folks haven't seen before. But I think those have died down a little bit, but we certainly do still take those phone calls.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Of course.
And then a quick question for me. I know, I think it was last year we'd had a hiccup with just accounting for those delinquencies in the broader budget. So have we implemented, I guess, a system to make sure that the broader budget is accounting for those delinquencies? No?
Yes, yeah, and Nikki and I have worked a little bit on that system as well, so that we're, our goal is to not bring the CFD budget back to you multiple times. And there's some timing considerations there, just in terms of when we have the data from the county, when we have collected all of the exemption requests from the folks who might be eligible to receive an exemption from the tax and so forth. And so trying to just massage that timing a little bit so that we're coming, kind of once with the final product and not multiple times.
Okay. Anything else? Okay.
Good, yeah.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yes,
Thanks, Sarah,
thank
for your
you.
report.
You're welcome.
I'm glad somebody's paying attention to all of that. I'm not gonna be me. Okay. Moving on to governance. Is this different than the report you already gave? Terry?
Jason, we have a public comment.
Oh, we do?
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm just
sorry.
asking, I do have public
Okay.
comment request. I'm asking the board if that would be acceptable to read.
Well, I
that.
think it's related to that agenda item, right?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
So I'll go ahead and read that. And so the public comment is submitted by Dr. Jim Godino. I'll go ahead and read that now. So good evening, trustees. Thank you for taking my brief comment via Ms. Theodoros. Again, on behalf of my 92-year-old mother, very low income senior in her home. Properties in Altadena bought by a family 70+ years ago. Let me follow up my testimony to the trustees in August, May 2023, and see if you can meet the concerns of my mother and family about the fairness of the current legacy property tax system, especially the current criteria for low income exemptions and its impact on seniors, especially low income seniors and others in Altadena. In my testimony, I included recent census data indicating many other seniors and low income and seniors, owners like my mom, and renters who pay fees passed on to them who all still need tax relief. Even though my mom qualified for an exemption this year, her parcel right next to her parcel constituting her full front and backyard, but that was designed as separate parcel 70 years ago. So my mom is still paying this tax and needs relief. Please address my multiple requests for the trustees to authorize a careful evaluation of the current implementation to assess how implementation might be modified to decrease the physical impacts on seniors and others like my mom. This is a reasonable request. I hope you will seek and listen to the voices of those impacted. Thanks for listening and taking action soon. Kindly, Dr. Jim Godino, born and raised in Altadena, and support a strong library programs. Any comment?
Okay.
Thank you.
Past comments on this, we have not engaged with because they were on non-agenda items. I feel like it's appropriate to respond since this is an agendized item. And with all due respect to this individual, we've gotten the exact same email and comments. I can't even count how many times an exemption has already been approved for the property in question. So I really don't understand it. On top of that, both staff and other trustees have gone out of their way to research other resources available to people on fixed incomes to seek assistance. And then lastly, the requirements to get an exemption are not set by us. We are responsible for disseminating the information, but that's not something that we have control over. And so I there's literally at this point, nothing else that can be done. I would ask this individual to take that to heart. Obviously, people are free to continue to communicate with us, but at a certain point, it's, the answer is what the answer is. Point out once again that in the information just provided to us, for any other members of the community who may see this and don't know what the exemption process is, it's laid out in this board package. And any specifics, questions or whatnot that folks have, can reach out to NBS or Nikki to answer that. I need to just put that in the record because we hear this every month.
Thank you.
Sarah, do you have anything to add? I know that NBS has researched this request. And my understanding is, so by June 30th of each fiscal year, or before the fiscal year starts, an exemption needs to be filed. That has been the case with Dr. Godino's mom both years. But she has a contiguous rental property that is right next to her parcel that is not eligible for the exemption, which is what he's hoping to get the exemption for. Is that correct, Sarah?
Yeah, that is all correct. The exemption is only available to the owner occupied portion, an owner occupied property. So the primary property that is owner occupied has been granted the exemption each year, but the property that is not owner occupied and is used as as we understand it, a rental property is not eligible for the exemption because it is not owner occupied.
Thank you for that clarification.
Mhm.
Hopefully I have a rental property when I retire and walk in.
Thank you for addressing it. I had a question about that, so I'm glad that it could be addressed, in the meeting on the agenda. So thank you.
And just again, on public comments, just so the entire public who may see this understands how this works, because of the Brown Act, we cannot engage on public comments, whether in writing or in person, on non-agenda items. Because then the public wouldn't have gotten the notice to be part of that discussion. But so we would encourage folks to, when possible, make comments on agendized items, because then we can actually engage with folks, answer questions, make comments, that kind of stuff, provide clarification. Is that it as far as public comments then? Okay. So then on the governance section for the vote, I think that was the same thing we covered in the.
Yeah, I don't know why it's listed twice. Okay, so.
This one. So announcements and planning, any correspondence? I don't see any on the agenda. Do we have any proposed future agenda items? Any trustees or staff?
I will mention that next month we will have a closed session to review in closed session my annual performance evaluation. Catalina and I will reach out to see if it works best to start earlier, which is what we often do. Because I do think it's going to be a little bit longer than agenda, longer than this one.
Okay.
So.
And then I'll just remind the trustees, if you haven't responded already, I know our consultants is trying to set up interviews with each of the trustees regarding Nikki's evaluation. So make sure to check your email if you haven't already responded to that. Okay, so with that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Okay, and we are adjourned at 6:50 p.m. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, staff. Appreciate it, you all.
Thank you, Jason.